What happens when royalty meets reality TV? When someone who believes the world owes them a platform steps onto a morning show set and forgets they're not untouchable. In just 31 seconds, Prince Harry went from guest to escorted security risk. And it all started with one question he refused to answer like a normal person. The Good Morning America studio was buzzing that morning. Michael Strahan sat across from Prince Harry, cameras rolling, millions watching from home. The interview was supposed to be simple, promotional, easy, a conversation about Prince Harry's latest charitable work, some light questions about life in California, maybe a mention of his family. Standard stuff for a morning show. Nothing controversial, nothing deep, just a friendly chat to fill the segment before they cut to weather. But from the moment Prince Harry walked onto that set, something felt off. The energy was wrong. His handshake with Michael was stiff, formal. No warmth, no smile. He sat down in the guest chair like he was doing everyone a favor just by showing up. Michael, being the professional he is, didn't let it faze him. He smiled, welcomed Prince Harry to the show, thanked him for coming. You know, the basics. The courtesy you extend to anyone sitting in that chair. Michael started with an easy one. So great to have you here. Let's talk about your foundation's work with veterans. What inspired you to focus on that cause? Prince Harry shifted in his seat. He looked at Michael like the question was beneath him. Well, Michael, I think that's fairly obvious, isn't it? I served. I understand what these men and women go through in a way that, frankly, most people in this country don't. Okay, a little condescending, but not terrible. Michael nodded, kept his smile. Absolutely. Your service is well documented and respected. Can you tell us about some of the specific programs you're launching? Prince Harry waved his hand dismissively. The programs are detailed on our website. I'm not here to read you a brochure, Michael. I thought we'd have a more meaningful conversation than that. And there it was, the first crack. Michael's smile tightened just slightly. You could see it if you were watching closely. That little flash in his eyes that said he caught the disrespect, but was choosing to rise above it. Because that's what professionals do. They don't take the bait. Of course, Michael said smoothly. Let's talk about something more personal then. You've been living in California for a few years now. How has that transition been for you and your family? Prince Harry leaned back, crossing his arms. It's been liberating, actually. Being away from the toxic environment we left behind. The constant scrutiny, the lies, the invasions of privacy. Here we can actually breathe. We can be ourselves without people constantly judging every move we make. Michael nodded again. Still professional. Still calm. I can imagine that's a big adjustment. Speaking of privacy, you've been pretty open about your life through interviews, documentaries, your book. How do you balance wanting privacy with also sharing your story publicly? And that's when Prince Harry's face changed. His jaw tightened. His eyes went cold. That's a lazy question, Michael. Really lazy. We share our truth on our terms. That's completely different from having photographers chase your children or having tabloids make up stories. Surely you can understand that distinction. The air in the studio shifted. You could feel it. Crew members glanced at each other. Producers in the control room sat up straighter. Michael Strahan, to his credit, didn't miss a beat. His voice stayed level. His posture stayed open. I absolutely understand that distinction. I was just curious about how you navigate those boundaries. Prince Harry scoffed. Actually scoffed. On live television. Navigate boundaries? Michael, you're a television host. You sit here every morning and ask people surface-level questions for entertainment. Don't pretend you understand what it's like to have your entire life dissected by the media. The boundaries I navigate are a bit more complex than your 7-minute segments. The studio went silent. Dead silent. You could hear someone's phone buzz in the background. A camera operator coughed. Michael sat there, his expression unchanged, but you could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. He was deciding how to handle this, how to keep the interview on track without letting this man completely disrespect him on his own show. "Well," Michael said, his voice still steady, but with an edge now, "I've been in the public eye for over 2 decades as an athlete and a broadcaster. I've had my share of media attention, both fair and unfair. So while our experiences are different, I do have some understanding of public scrutiny. But let's refocus. You mentioned your truth. What do you hope people take away from your story?" Prince Harry laughed. Not a friendly laugh, a mocking one. "My story? Michael, you're doing it again, reducing everything to a story, a narrative. This is my life. These are real consequences we faced, real trauma. And you're sitting here treating it like it's just another segment between commercials for cereal and laundry detergent." Now Michael's expression changed. The professional mask slipped just a fraction. His smile faded. He leaned forward slightly. "Prince Harry, I understand this is personal for you. I'm not trying to minimize your experiences. But you came on this show, which is a morning talk show, knowing the format. If you're uncomfortable with the questions, we can end the interview right now. That's completely your choice." Prince Harry's eyes widened. Like he couldn't believe Michael was pushing back. Like he was shocked anyone would dare suggest he could leave. "Uncomfortable? I'm not uncomfortable, Michael. I'm disappointed. I expected better from you. I expected questions with substance, with depth, not this tabloid-level nonsense you're throwing at me." Michael set his cards down on the table between them. The interview notes, the prepared questions. He looked directly at Prince Harry. "Tabloid level, I asked about your foundation, your family, and how you balance privacy with public life. Those are standard questions for any public figure. If those feel like attacks to you, then maybe the issue isn't with my questions." That did it. Prince Harry stood up. Not quickly, but deliberately, like he was making a statement. "You know what, Michael? This was clearly a mistake. Yet I thought coming here would be an opportunity for real dialogue. But you're just like all the rest. You don't actually care about the truth. You care about your ratings, your advertisers, your shallow morning show demographics." Michael stood up too, slower, calmer, in control. "I care about having a respectful conversation with my guests. All of them. But respect goes both ways. You've insulted me, insulted this show, and insulted our audience. If you want to leave, that's fine. But don't blame me for your inability to handle basic interview questions." Prince Harry's face went red. Genuinely red. His voice got louder. "My inability? Do you have any idea who you're talking to? I've sat down with Oprah, with major journalists, with people who actually know how to conduct an interview. And you're going to stand there and lecture me about handling questions? You're a former football player who reads off a teleprompter, Michael. Don't get confused about your relevance here." The entire studio froze. Camera operators, sound techs, producers, everyone. Because that crossed a line. A massive line. You don't come onto someone's show and attack their credentials. You don't insult them personally. You especially don't do it on live television. Michael's jaw clenched. For the first time, you could see real anger flash across his face, but his voice stayed controlled. Dangerously controlled. "You know what? You're right. I was a football player. I worked my way up from nothing. I earned everything I have. I didn't have it handed to me by birth. And I treat people with respect because that's how I was raised. Something you clearly know nothing about." He turned to someone off camera. "Get security." Prince Harry laughed again. That same mocking laugh. "Security? You're calling security on me? This is absurd. Absolutely absurd." Michael looked right at him. "You came onto my set. You disrespected me. You disrespected my team. You disrespected everyone watching. And now you're going to leave. Whether you walk out on your own or security escorts. You is your choice. Your set, Prince Harry said, his voice dripping with contempt. This isn't your set, Michael. This is ABC's set. You're just an employee here. You don't have the authority to kick anyone off. Actually, came a voice from off camera, he does. A producer had stepped onto the set. A woman in her 50s, headset on, clipboard in hand. She looked at Prince Harry with zero emotion. Mr. Strahan is the host of this program. If he feels a guest is being disruptive or disrespectful, he has every right to end the interview. Security is on their way to escort you out of the building. Prince Harry looked around the studio like he was expecting someone to defend him, to step in and say, this was all a misunderstanding. But everyone just stared back. Cameramen, assistants, the other hosts watching from the side. No one said a word. This is unbelievable, Prince Harry said, but his voice had lost some of its edge. He was starting to realize this was actually happening, that he was actually being kicked off. You people have no idea what you're doing. The backlash from this is going to be enormous. Michael crossed his arms. The backlash from what? From me refusing to let you insult me on my own show? From standing up for myself and my team? I'll take that backlash all day long. 2 security guards appeared in the studio doorway. Big guys. Professional. Calm. They walked toward Prince Harry without rushing. Without drama. Just doing their job. Sir, one of them said, we need you to come with us. Prince Harry looked at them. Then at Michael. Then at the producer. His face went through about 5 different emotions. Anger. Disbelief. Embarrassment. Defiance. And finally, resignation. Fine, he said, straightening his jacket. I'll leave. But you're making a huge mistake, Michael. A huge mistake. People are going to hear about this. Michael didn't blink. Good. I hope they do. I hope everyone hears about how you walked onto this show expecting to be treated like royalty. Like your title gives you the right to talk down to people. And I hope they hear about how that doesn't fly here. Not on my watch. Prince Harry started walking toward the exit, the security guards flanking him. He turned back one more time. You're nothing but a game show host playing journalist, Michael. That's all you'll ever be. Michael smiled. A real smile this time. And you're a guy who was born into privilege and spent his whole life complaining about it. At least I earned my spot in this chair. That was it. The final word. Prince Harry stormed out of the studio, security behind him. The heavy door closed. The silence that followed was deafening. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Everyone just processed what had just happened, what they had just witnessed. Michael stood there for a moment, his hands on his hips, staring at the empty guest chair. Then he turned to the cameras, in which were still rolling. His face softened. The anger drained away. He was back to being the professional host everyone knew. Well, he said to the camera, his voice light, almost casual. That was unexpected. We'll be right back after this break. The cameras cut. The red lights went dark, and the studio erupted. Not in chaos, but in that quiet, intense buzz of people trying to figure out what the next move was. Producers were on phones. Assistants were typing frantically. Social media managers were probably already watching the clip go viral. Michael sat back down in his chair. He picked up his coffee mug, took a sip, and shook his head. A makeup artist rushed over to touch up his face before they came back from commercial. Someone handed him a new set of notes. The show had to go on, because here's the thing about live television. It doesn't stop. It doesn't pause. It doesn't care about your drama or your ego or your royal title. The clock keeps ticking. The commercials end. The cameras come back on. And you either handle it like a professional or you prove you never belonged there in the first place. Michael handled it. He came back from that commercial break like nothing happened. Smiled at the camera. Introduced the next segment. Chatted with his co-hosts about the weather forecast. Laughed at a joke. Did his job. Because that's what professionals do. They don't let entitled guests throw them off their game. Meanwhile, somewhere in the building, Prince Harry was being escorted through back hallways toward a service exit. Away from the cameras. Away from the audience. Away from the platform he thought he was entitled to. The security walked him past offices and storage rooms and equipment closets. Not the glamorous route. Not the red carpet treatment. One of the security guards held the door open. The exit led to a loading dock. Gray concrete, dumpsters, delivery trucks. About as far from royal as you can get. Prince Harry stepped through without a word. The door closed behind him, locked automatically. He was out. Back in the studio, a crew member turned to another. "Did that really just happen?" she whispered. "Yeah," the other one said, still watching Michael work through the next segment flawlessly. "Yeah, it did." Because what Prince Harry didn't understand, what he failed to grasp in all his privilege and entitlement, was this simple truth. Titles don't matter on American television. Respect matters. Professionalism matters. How you treat people matters. And when you walk onto someone's set acting like you're above everyone else, like basic courtesy doesn't apply to you, you're going to get shown the door, royal or not. Michael Strahan didn't need a crown to command respect. He earned it. Through years of hard work, through treating people decently, through showing up every single day and doing his job with integrity. That's the kind of royalty that actually means something in America. The earned kind. The deserved kind. The interview that was supposed to last 15 minutes ended in less than 8. But those 8 minutes told you everything you needed to know. About entitlement. About respect. About what happens when someone who thinks they're untouchable meets someone who refuses to be pushed around. Prince Harry came onto Good Morning America expecting deference, expecting soft questions, expecting to be handled with kid gloves because of who his grandmother was. Instead, he got treated like any other guest, asked normal questions, given normal expectations. And when he couldn't handle that, when he lashed out and tried to assert dominance through insults and condescension, he got exactly what he deserved. He got removed. Not because of who he was, but because of how he acted. Because in that studio, on that morning, his title meant nothing. His past meant nothing. His connections meant nothing. What mattered was the moment. And in that moment, he showed everyone watching exactly who he really was. Someone who couldn't handle being treated like everyone else. Someone who expected special treatment and threw a tantrum when he didn't get it. Someone who thought his background gave him permission to look down on others. And someone who learned, in the most public way possible, that none of that matters when you're being disrespectful. Michael kept hosting, kept smiling, kept doing his job. Because that's what you do when you're secure in who you are. When you know your worth. When you don't need to prove anything to anyone. You just keep going. Keep showing up. Keep being professional. The producer who had stepped in earlier stood in the control room, arms crossed, watching the monitors. Someone asked her if she thought they'd face any consequences for kicking him off. She shrugged. From who? We have everything on tape. He was out of line. Michael handled it perfectly. If anyone has a problem with that, they can take it up with me. And that was that. The show continued. The segments rolled on. The weather guy did his forecast. The cooking demonstration happened. The celebrity guest after the break was gracious and charming, and everything Prince Harry wasn't. Life went on. Because here's what Prince Harry never seemed to understand. The world doesn't stop for you just because you're used to it stopping. People don't bow and scrape just because your family tree is impressive. Respect isn't given automatically based on your last name. It's earned every single day through your actions, through how you treat others, through whether you can handle normal human interaction without throwing a fit. He failed that test spectacularly in front of millions of people. And Michael Strahan, the guy he tried to dismiss as just a former football player, showed him what real class looks like, what real professionalism is, what it means to stand your ground without losing your cool. The Good Morning America studio that day became a classroom, and the lesson was simple. It doesn't matter who you were born as. It matters who you choose to be. Prince Harry chose to be entitled, condescending, disrespectful, and he paid the price for it. Not with money or power or influence, but with dignity, with reputation, with the respect he thought his title automatically granted him. Michael chose differently. He chose professionalism. Patience up until the line was crossed. Then firmness, strength, decisiveness. He chose to protect his dignity and his show and his team. And in doing so, he taught everyone watching what leadership actually looks like. By the time the show wrapped, the clip was already everywhere. Social media exploded. News sites picked it up. Think pieces were being written. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone had a take. But the facts were simple and undeniable. A guest came on a show. Got asked normal questions. Couldn't handle it. Insulted the host. Got kicked off. End of story. Except it wasn't the end. Not really. Because moments like that live forever. They become part of the public record. Part of how people remember you. Prince Harry would forever be the guy who got kicked off Good Morning America for being rude to Michael Strahan. That's the story. That's the legacy of that morning. And Michael, he'd be remembered as the host who didn't take disrespect from anyone. Who stood up for himself and his show. Who proved that you don't need a royal title to have backbone. You just need self-respect and the willingness to enforce boundaries when someone crosses them. The makeup artist finished touching up Michael's face. The floor director counted down. 3, 2, 1. And Michael Strahan looked into the camera and smiled. That same warm, genuine smile he gave every morning. Because nothing had changed for him. He was still the same person. Still the same professional. Still the same host who showed up every day and did his job with integrity. Prince Harry, wherever he was at that moment, was probably fuming. Probably calling people. Probably trying to control the narrative. Probably convinced that he'd been wronged. That Michael had disrespected him. That the whole thing was unfair. But the cameras don't lie. The footage doesn't lie. Anyone who watched could see exactly what happened. Could hear the condescension in Prince Harry's voice. Could see the dismissiveness in his body language. Could witness the moment he crossed from guest to problem. You can't spin that. You can't rewrite it. You can't make yourself the victim when you're clearly the antagonist. When you're clearly the one who created the problem. When you're clearly the one who couldn't handle basic civility. The studio audience, the few dozen people who had been sitting in the seats watching this unfold live, were buzzing. They'd come expecting a normal morning show taping. Maybe they'd get on camera. Maybe they'd see their favorite hosts. Maybe they'd watch a cooking segment or hear about a new book. Instead, they witnessed television history. They saw someone get kicked off a live show for being disrespectful. They had a story they'd tell for years. Did you see his face when security showed up? One audience member whispered to another during the commercial break. He really thought they wouldn't do it, the other one whispered back. Like he's special or something. Well, he found out he's not. And that was the truth of it. Prince Harry found out, in the most embarrassing way possible, that his title didn't protect him from consequences. That being royal didn't give him a free pass to treat people poorly. That America doesn't care about your bloodline if you're acting like a jerk. Michael Strahan finished the show strong. Hit every mark. Nailed every transition. Showed zero signs of being rattled. Because he wasn't rattled. He'd dealt with tough situations before. He'd faced down defensive linemen trying to take his head off. He'd navigated high-pressure moments in front of massive audiences. One entitled guest throwing a tantrum wasn't going to shake him. When the final segment ended and the cameras went off, the studio broke into applause. Not the polite, obligatory kind. The genuine kind. the crew clapping for their host, supporting him, backing him up, showing him they respected how he handled it. Michael stood up, waved to the audience, thanked his team. Then he walked off the set, pulled out his phone, and probably saw about 1 million messages already. Texts from friends, calls from executives, emails from publicists. The machine was already in motion. The story was already spreading. But none of that mattered in that moment. What mattered was that he'd stood his ground. He'd refused to be disrespected. He'd shown millions of people that you don't have to tolerate bad behavior from anyone. Not even a prince. Especially not a prince who'd forgotten that respect is a two-way street. That courtesy isn't optional. That treating people decently isn't something you only do for people you consider your equals. You do it for everyone, because that's what decent people do. Prince Harry learned that lesson the hard way. In front of cameras, in front of an audience, in front of millions of viewers who watched him implode over questions that any other guest would have handled easily. Who watched him prove every criticism about entitlement and privilege that people had ever leveled at him. He walked into that studio thinking he was going to control the narrative, shape his image, tell his story. Instead, he showed everyone exactly who he was when things didn't go his way, when he wasn't being catered to, when he was treated like a normal person, and he couldn't handle it. That's the real story. Not the drama of the exit, not the security guards or the heated exchange. The real story is that someone who talks constantly about authenticity and truth couldn't be authentic for 8 minutes on a morning talk show. Someone who claims to want normalcy couldn't handle normal interview questions. Someone who positions himself as a victim of media treatment became hostile the moment a host asked him anything of substance. The irony was lost on no one. And Michael Strahan, whether he meant to or not, exposed all of it, just by doing his job, just by asking standard questions, just by refusing to be treated like he was beneath his guest. By the end of that day, the clip had been viewed millions of times. Commentators weighed in. Social media erupted with takes. Some people defended Prince Harry, called the questions unfair, said Michael should have been more deferential, but they were in the minority. Most people saw it for what it was, a host doing his job, a guest being difficult, a situation escalating because one person couldn't keep their composure, and a well-deserved ejection from a show that didn't owe anyone special treatment. Good Morning America continued on. Same time, same network, same host. Michael Strahan showed up the next day like nothing happened. Did his job. Interviewed guests who were gracious and respectful. Proved that the show was bigger than any one interview, any one moment, any one entitled guest. And somewhere, Prince Harry was learning a very expensive lesson about American television, about American audiences, about what happens when you forget that privilege only takes you so far, that at some point you have to be able to back it up with character, with grace, with the ability to handle yourself when things don't go exactly as you planned. He failed that test. Michael passed it, and everyone who watched knew exactly who came out of that exchange looking better, who handled themselves with class, who proved they belonged in that chair, in that studio, on that show. It wasn't the guy with the royal title. It was the guy with the self-respect,